Ridgefield Inland Wetlands Board, IW 24-19, 27 Abbott Avenue. Second public hearing, September 12th, 2024.
That this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Ridgefield Inland Wetland Board for Thursday, September 12th, 2024. In attendance, we have Alan Pilch, Carson Fincham, Chris Phelps, Tim Bishop, David Smith, and our newest member, Isaac Flatto, who just joined literally today and comes to us recommended by the Democratic Town Committee, which was necessary because when you lose somebody of a certain party, you replace somebody of the same party. However, he impressed us very much in the interview, and we are lucky to have him.
Thank you.
And I should go on to say that if he, we have a couple of hearings today that are continued, and in order for him to be able to vote on these applications, he will have to first review all the materials and last meeting, and then state that for the record when we get to that point of voting on anything.
Sure thing.
Okay, then I think we can get restarted here. On application IW 24-19, 27 Abbott Avenue, plenary ruling application for the construction of 10 residential townhouses with associated drainage and landscaping within the upland review area of wetlands and watercourses. Owner Vitan Alimi, applicant Brian Carey. So
I will read the documents.
The new documents, please. Yes.
There's an approved letter. Applicant did not name it correctly, but Caleb was saying it's from NDDB letter. So I'm not sure exactly what that is. Timothy Bishop's resume, which was uploaded on August 23rd. 27 Abbott Avenue, a presentation with site plan, was uploaded on August 26th. Public correspondence, which was submitted, was uploaded on August 27th. Land text response to SLR's comments were submitted on September 5th. Plan set, again submitted by an applicant, was uploaded on September 6th. Petition response dated 9/5/2024 was submitted on September 9th. 27 Abbott Avenue's IWC review was uploaded on September 11th. Intervener's reply to 22A-19 challenge was uploaded on September 12th. SLR's biological peer review report was uploaded on September 12th. Intervener Dr. Danze's environmental comments were uploaded on September 12th. Public correspondence was uploaded on September 12th. And intervener's attorney's correspondence was uploaded on September 12th.
Thank you very much. Okay, so where we left off last time was we had put off discussion and a vote on the intervener status. I trust that board members have had a chance since the last meeting to read the letter from the potential intervener. And since then, we have received also letters from both the applicant and the intervener regarding whether we should or should not approve this intervener status. I believe you got both of those sent to you today by Caleb to make sure everyone had a chance to review both of those letters. And we have Attorney Beecher with us today. And perhaps, if you don't mind, Tom, if you would give a quick overview of what our job is tonight in terms of granting or not granting, and then we'll discuss it and take a vote.
Sure. For the record, Tom Beecher, counsel for the board. At this stage, well, the intervener process is 2 stages, but this is the initial stage where the board needs to make a determination as to whether to grant intervener status. If you grant intervener status, then The harder work is later on when you have to determine whether the interveners have actually proven their case. But in this case, you've got two interveners proposed. One is Mr. Sachs individually, and the other is Mr. Sachs and the Neighborhood Association. In making your determination, you have to look at whether the petition states an alleged unreasonable harm to something that's within your jurisdiction. So the harm needs to be a potential harm to the wetlands or a watercourse. And if that part is satisfied in the petition, then you have to determine whether they've alleged a connection of unreasonable harm to the wetlands or a watercourse to the applicant's proposed project. And I think, my advice to the board is that if you're at all wavering in the middle, you should grant intervener status.
Okay. And also that it doesn't mean that we are agreeing or disagreeing at this time. That's
That's
for
correct.
later.
That's for stage 2.
Right. So we don't have to come to any conclusions about what they are alleging at this time.
Yeah, they're merely determining whether they've made a colorable claim of a connection between the project and alleged harm to the wetlands or a watercourse. In other words, it's more than just bald assertions in the petition.
Okay, thank you. So, members of the board, anyone like to comment at this point? Tim.
Yes, thank you. I did this before at the last meeting, and I maintain my position that I believe their status is legitimate and should be granted. I won't make a motion yet, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Hey, Carson.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I agree with Tim. I've had a chance to review everything, even the documents that came in today. And I believe, in line with what Attorney Beecher just said, that it's very clear to me that they have made colorable arguments that are significant. Again, we're not judging the merits of those arguments at this point on the factual basis, but I think the arguments seem clearly directed to our purview. And just to briefly address something in Mr. Klein's letter as well, I noticed the argument about whether they're standing or not. And as an attorney, I appreciate the fact that, you need to preserve all your issues for appeal, but I don't believe that was a colorable argument against intervener status.
Thank you. Isaac?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to basically say exactly what Carson just said. Also, with a lawyer's hat on, I think that not only the standing issue, resolved basically by the arguments that were made in the letter, but to echo what Tim said as well, I think point by point, they laid out a pretty clear argument as to why their status should be granted.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, hi, Chris Phelps for the record. And I just wanted to say basically what everybody said, but I felt like the wording of the statute was clear enough, but also broad enough to allow the applicants to get their intervener status.
Okay. Do I have a motion then? Tim, do you want to go back and do it?
Yes, I will make the motion to grant the intervener status for this application.
And that's
Okay.
to both?
To both,
Individual-
correct.
To both the neighborhood organization and to Mr. Sachs in particular?
Yes, for both. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay. Intervener status is then approved. And we can go into the meeting from where we left off on this one. I believe last time we got through the initial presentation by the applicant. And did I have anything else? No, I think we're just going to let the applicant pick up. Yeah, I don't see that I have, I'm sorry. I had some notes here on this. I think we got through the application and we had, in the meantime, some information going back and forth between our biological expert and also our engineering expert. And so it seems to me probably best to have the applicant comment on their responses. Have you, I don't recall, did they respond to both, Artie, or just the engineering so far?
So the SLR and to engineering,
Both.
yes.
Okay,
And
so
And
I'm sorry?
we have both of them. So once applicant is done, we can ask them to talk.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I was blanking on where exactly we were leaving this off, but it all came back. So if the applicant would like to review their answers to the questions from our experts, then we could start there.
Sure, and I'll open things up for our side here. Madam Chair, for the record, my name is Jay Klein. I'm an attorney with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, partner
Yep.
in our zoning practice group here on behalf on the applicants. We did provide responses to both the Artel and SLR's initial set of comments. But as already mentioned earlier this evening, SLR, some new comments from SLR were uploaded today. I think Artel provided some additional comments yesterday. Our team hasn't had a chance to respond to those in great detail, but we feel confident that we'll be able to meet most, if not all, of the comments raised there. What we did want to take advantage of being here this evening, since we did a lot of talking last time, was to hear from those experts tonight, allow you all to have an opportunity to talk to them about the proposal. And then, of course, hear from neighbors and residents who've been interested in this application. One thing that I will say initially, in reviewing the comments that SLR provided, there was multiple references to perhaps including a bioswale or a rain garden, something to that effect in that 75-foot buffer that we spoke about at our last meeting. That's something that our team is certainly open to incorporating in the plan. We just, wanted to get a sense from the folks on this board how they felt about that measure, and perhaps hearing from SLR themselves that'll help guide that determination. So,
Okay,
trying to be brief and leave it to your experts, and we'll take it from there if that's all right.
that would be fine.
Great.
Artie, do you have the people
Yeah.
ready?
Sure. So I'll allow Michelle from Artel to be promoted, and then we can have Marley and Till, who is from SLR. Michelle?
Yep, I'm sorry. It had to do with things. So Dinus, it's Michelle Morris McCauley, the Artel Engineering. Dinus Verbicus, the principal at Artel, and I reviewed the plans, and they did address our August 7th letter, and we reissued some comments the other day. 3 comments that we have still outstanding are: we reviewed the stormwater system and the retaining wall detail, and we see that there's some drains for the retaining wall, and based on the detail, it shows that there are 40 feet on center from the end starting, and having them at the end. And we're concerned with, there's maybe 2 to 3 of those drains located adjacent to the stormwater system. And at the depth that they are, even though the impervious liner is there, when the stone gets full of water and it starts to fill up and then fill into the stormwater system, we're just concerned that instead of filling up the stormwater and providing the storage for the stormwater runoff, that the discharge will actually start going through those 4-inch drains for the retaining wall. So we just wanted that to be reviewed by the applicant. A second comment that we had was about the level spreader. With the way the existing contours and elevations are, we're concerned that there's kind of a ridge on the southern part of the property, and where the shed is, there's a little bit of a high point. So we're worried that when the sheet flows off of the level spreader, that it will concentrate and go through the north onto the neighbor's property. So we wanted that to be reviewed as well. And then we also noticed that the trench drain that was located in the snow melt area was removed, but it's still shown on the cross section. So we just wanted clarification if that was proposed to be removed or if it's just taken off the plans by mistake. And those are our main concerns with the engineering aspect of the project.
So you're saying that your other concerns were answered
Yes,
in
the
intervening document?
Correct. Yeah, the comments that we had from the August 7th, they addressed our concerns.
Okay. So Mr. Klein, do you want to respond to each of these in turn? Might be easier for us if you did.
I do not. Brian Carey's here. He may have some initial responses for these specific items.
Brian Carey, Forum Land Tech, here for the applicant. We did receive their, I'm sorry, there's just a bit of an echo. We did receive their comments today, and we will provide a comprehensive response to them. And we will also address the comments that are put forth at the meeting tonight. I want to look at them and provide a comprehensive written response, if that is okay. And we will have that to you early next week.
Okay, thank you. So we can go on to our SLR next.
Hi, good evening. This is Marley Antle. I'm an environmental scientist with SLR.
Thank you. So if you would like to present any, I realize a little bit awkward because things have gone a little bit back and forth. We did receive your initial letter, and I believe some of the issues that were in there may have been addressed, but feel free to go through as much or a little of your concerns as makes sense to do at this point.
Sure. I guess my understanding was more that I could be here to provide extra detail or clarification if anyone on the board or the applicant wanted us to explain anything further. But yeah, in the letter that we submitted just today, we acknowledged that the applicant had provided some explanation for why what we consider to be more low impact design measures were not included. And part of that was staying outside of the 75-foot buffer, but we also would like a little more clarification on why in their response letter, they said that these features were determined not to provide additional necessary protections to offsite wetlands. The features being a bioswale or a rain garden, any kind of more naturalized surficial stormwater management features than the under subsurface detention galleries that are provided. So I guess some clarification on whether the main justification for excluding those kind of features is staying outside of that buffer zone, or if calculations have been provided and analysis can be shown that those kind of features would not provide any sort of additional benefit to stormwater management and protection of the wetlands. So that's a main comment that we have. And I did hear Mr. Klein state that there is some, the applicant is willing to consider adding some of these features. So we're happy to hear that. And we had a comment about the planting plan that we see that they did add a pretty good number of woody plants, but usually in the landscaping plans that we work on and see in this industry, we would just expect more naturalized, like clusters of shrubs mixing up, where instead of just like these straight lines that we were seeing. We also had a concern with the species that was selected for the directly planting within the wetland boundary at the I think the eastern edge of the property. So yeah, we just explained that we weren't of the opinion that planting only hay-scented fern would be the best, most successful choice for that area. Again, we were on site this week, and even in the relatively dry conditions, you can see that there's a really dynamic hydrology in that site. There's really shallow banks, and you can see where the ordinary high water mark comes up to. So, we're not exactly sure where the limit of the planting, but it looks like this will be a spot where slightly more hydrophytic species would probably be successful. So just considering adding some more diversity there. And yeah, we would also encourage the consideration or the presentation of another alternative other than the alternative that we understand was previously denied. So just sort of putting that out there, that if that, in our opinion, doesn't, obviously it's the board's opinion that matters, but just looking at it from outsiders, we weren't sure whether that was an acceptable alternative, something that was denied by the board. And so again, just encouraging the consideration of a different alternative. And yeah, we had a few other comments, but I think those were the biggest ones. So thank you.
Okay. Any board members have questions? Alan?
I have a couple questions and or comments. One of my concerns with this plan, am I allowed to go forward? One of the comments I have is, I'm just concerned that the stormwater management practice, because of its location, would be impacted by heavy equipment during the actual construction. And that would have a detrimental impact on the ability of the soils to, it would impact the structure of the soils and impact the ability of the practice to actually infiltrate into the soils. And that's one of my concerns. I mean, typically when one constructs a infiltration practice, usually put a construction fence around the perimeter of it in order to protect the soils from, or the impact of heavy equipment from impacting the soil structure. And I think here that's really not feasible based on its location, let alone the fact that it's within the parking area. And I think that's a concern of mine. It's something that I perhaps Artel, perhaps Ms. Morris McCauley or Bekas, and the applicant could address that one concern that I have here. And one other question I might have for
SLR too, is I've expressed this before, is my concern that this project proposes a substantial retaining wall around its entire perimeter on the north, east, and a part of the south, and then there's the buildings on the south side. And I guess my concern, again, is that wetland species are not just limited to wetlands or even the upland review areas, but they can extend even further. And that's something I would like to have both the applicant and perhaps SLR could at least discuss as well.
Okay. Any other members at this point? I have a question, Marley. Are you saying that going into the 75-foot up area, the upland review area, is necessarily detrimental or not in order to do plantings, in order to do swales or whatever else might be beneficial under the circumstances?
So in the, brief visit that my colleague Megan Raymond and I had on site, we did auger into the soils in the upland portion within 75 feet of the wetland boundary. And we found the soils to be pretty compacted and not to show wetland indicators. So, the vegetation in that area is already highly disturbed. It's our opinion that obviously with proper construction phasing, proper construction phase protections, sedimentation and erosion controls, that we think that some work in terms of, basically there will already be boots on the ground in that area. There will be a lot of disturbance. There will be planting going on, installing some features that would end up having a more positive benefit in the long term to the wetland would not be extremely detrimental in our opinion, especially given the very subtle slope. I mean, it's not a steep pitch toward the wetland in that location, and ultimately that is the board's decision, but whether to approve any additional disturbance within that area. But we do believe and have seen in numerous other projects that those kinds of activities could be performed in an area like that without having necessarily any long-term negative impact.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Questions or comments at this point? Jason, did you want to add anything right at this moment, or should we go to the public at this point?
No, want to certainly get to the public quickly. They've been patient throughout this. One thing that I should have mentioned earlier, Marley or Miss Intel, I'm sorry, and her colleague mentioned it's comment C6, I believe, about a conservation easement potentially, and you refer to it as the mitigation area. Is that the upland review area, Miss Intel?
Yes, that's what we were referring to.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry for not matching the terminology there. That's something, another item that we'd be happy to incorporate into our plan as well. And we'll provide more fulsome and written responses for, I presume, the 26th, the September 26th meeting. But I wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate. Okay, Artie, are we getting ready for recognizing the public?
Sure. So you can announce it, and as hands are raised, I will start.
Okay, yes, and for those of you who joined late, the sequence will actually be, because of Zoom putting things in what it thinks are alphabetical order, that people will be recognized according to their first names, because that's how Zoom will line them all up for us, and not when people actually raise their hands. We have no way to control that. Also, I just ask, as you all know, keep your comments brief if you can, and also at this point, now that your organization has intervener status, you are permitted to, and I hope this can be brief, also have any experts that you hired comment. And so I would like to go to the public first. I hate to always go to the public last if you all don't, if that suits you. And also, please make sure your comments are limited to the environmental issues, not to anything like traffic or fire department or any of those things. They're not in our purview. And that's it. We have.
Okay. First is Mr. Carr.
Yes, hi, thank you. Kurt Carr, 62 Prospect Ridge for the record. I'm a little bit confused because just remind you that you denied an application for this particular location, and the applicant has appealed that decision, and that appeal is still being litigated, which I think is unusual. Mr. Beecher may want to weigh in on that the applicant would reapply before the other appeal is either, is resolved, and whether this amounts to kind of an ex parte communication while that is being litigated. I wonder if Mr. Beecher could opine on that. Thank you.
Okay. Tom?
It's actually not unusual for an appeal to be taken from an initial application and then for an applicant to file an application subsequent to the appeal and while the appeal is pending. At this stage, motions have been filed with the court, and the court has put this on hold so that we're not, quote unquote, actively litigating it at the moment. But yes, it is still pending.
Thank you very much. Artie?
Yeah. Catherine Braun.
Hi, excuse me.
Hello.
I am Catherine Braun, attorney for the intervening parties. Would you like me to do my presentation now, or are you preferring to do the rest of the public? My presentation will take at least half an hour.
I think we'd like to hear from the public first, unless it's your opinion that the public should hear your presentation first. But if not, I would really like to get to the public.
I will follow your guidance then.
Thank you. We'll come back to you.
So it's Steve Trinkus. He's also part of the intervener. Do you want to wait and then go next?
Steve is part of the intervention, correct? He is the engineering expert. We also have an environmental expert, but he just submitted a report, which I was going to summarize. He's not here. Steve is here, though. Steve Trinkus.
Right. So Steve was the next person, so I'll hold him. I'll allow the next person to talk with Chuck Hancock then.
Okay.
My name is Chuck Hancock. I live at 480 North Street in Ridgefield. This is the first meeting I've sat in to listen to the issues on this. I just have a question on the inland wetlands. Has any consideration been given to the impact that 10 additional families, however many people that would be, would have on the inland wetlands as they traipse through it or live there in that area?
I don't know that is part of our purview in this case. whether, there's more traffic, all of those things are at the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Our purview is whether what they are planning to do here will or will not affect in a negative way the adjacent wetlands.
Okay, and whether 10 additional families would impact the wetlands is a planning and zoning issue rather than you?
Well, that's a complicated question, but our concern is that there not be any direct or indirect impacts to the wetland. That is our responsibility. So it is our responsibility, for example, to make sure that there isn't, additional runoff from that property as a result of this construction. But it is not in our purview to be concerned with how many people are going to live there, how many cars are going to be there. That's all planning and zoning.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have John West.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is John West, and I live at 16 Abbott Avenue. A few things. I've lived in Ridgefield for over 50 years, so I guess I'm close to being called a townie. I possess some background in architecture and site planning. I've witnessed the town of Ridgefield experience good development denied, so-so development, and bad development. Assuredly, this proposal for 27 Abbott Avenue represents incredibly bad development. In so many ways, it makes my head spin. So first, the area was hit hard with flooding from those August 18th rains. And the Ridgefield Press published an editorial on Thursday, August 29th, titled "Flooding is Destructive and We're Making It Worse," by Alicia Claremont, Executive Director of River Alliance of Connecticut. Mr. Alimi, the board members, and some of Ridgefield town officials might want to read it. Abbott Avenue currently has a serious overladen plowed snow issue during winter months. I would like to see a comprehensive snow management and enforcement plan for the proposed project for 27 Abbott Avenue, including realistic plowed snow placement and or the handling of snow removal, vehicle relocation during these operations, and control of snow melt onto frozen ground. Abbott Avenue experiences its worst street flooding during winter months. Whatever the development is, be it on private or municipal property, the water that falls from the sky needs to be directed elsewhere. It's called runoff. Where should it run off to? Who cares, as long as it's not here? Regardless of any abatement system provided, runoff is going elsewhere. Whether it's over the surface or through ground saturation, runoff is adding to the already overtaxed municipal stormwater system. There are countless areas of development in Ridgefield that have resulted in street and or yard flooding not existent prior to. The area around Abbott Avenue is flood prone. Adding even small amounts from runoff or groundwater incursion exasperates this problem. The town takes steps to rectify these flood issues with upgrades to the stormwater system. Who pays? Is the developer ever held responsible? In its simplest form, the civil law rule states that landowners are strictly liable for altering the natural drainage over surface water. The stormwater management system proposed for 27 Abbott Avenue appears to be very thorough, looks impressive, and by all accounts may function flawlessly. Except what if it does not? What if it fails and augments flooding conditions in the already flood-prone area? How does the public hold the developer responsible without spending wads of cash for litigation? What airtight insurances can the developer offer to compensate for this? Recognition is needed that we cannot keep building on every piece of property there is without consequences. This site on this street can barely support 2 housing units, let alone 10. I am firmly resolute that 27 Avenue must be, if it must be developed, no more than 6 housing units should be allowed with credible architectural design, not appearing as if 27 Avenue was ceded by the Army to build what presently proposed resembles barracks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. West.
That's Nadia.
I have Arian.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's hard to follow the last resident that testified, but I'll just go really quickly. My name is Aaron Gorman. I live at 41 Gilbert Street in Ridgefield. I'm a licensed professional environmental engineer. I'd like to express a few brief concerns with the proposed application for the construction of a 10 residential townhouse building to be located at 27 Abbott Avenue within the wetland upland review area. As a downstream property owner and resident, I have significant concerns with the developer's proposed methods to mitigate stormwater runoff, as the proposed development will result in approximately 2/3 of the entire property being converted from pervious surface to impervious surface. The wetlands directly impacted by the proposed development are part of a creek that, in addition to providing a much needed environmentally and ecologically sensitive area in a downtown portion of Ridgefield, also has the benefit of providing drainage from the upper elevation properties located on the southern end of Abbott Ave to the base of Abbott Ave where it intersects with Gilbert Street. Currently, several properties at the intersection of Abbott and Gilbert, mainly 37 Gilbert, 43 Gilbert, and 3 Abbott Avenue, as well as our property, which is 41 Gilbert, are prone to flooding, as evidenced by the recent flooding events that have been spoken about in the earlier hearing, as well as on comments from this prior call, August 18th. And then we raised these concerns based on flooding events from September 1st, 2021 and prior testimony. Due to the developer's property size limitations, it's only 0.44 acres. And the design elements they selected, the proposed stormwater collection system is not adequate to contain the rain volumes experienced during the 2 most recent rain events referenced above that led to significant flooding. According to USGS, the September 2021 storm had 8 inches falling in Southwest Connecticut within a matter of hours, and then an additional 1 to 2 inches per hour at 6 p.m. The most recent August storms in 2024 had rain totals in Reading of around 8 inches, Bethel 8 inches, Norwalk 7 inches, Brookfield 7 inches, and Danbury 5 inches. We don't have a rain total for Ridgefield, so we used approximate areas, and those rain totals occurred only over a couple hours. My understanding of the developer's design is that it's intended to handle rain volumes up to 1 in a 100-year storm, which the developer stated in previous board meetings. However, these 2 rain events significantly exceeded a 1 in a 100-year storm event, and it's abundantly clear any increase in stormwater runoff will only exacerbate flooding issues that are currently experienced directly downstream of the proposed development. It's inappropriate for the board to approve such an application. The developer has not proven beyond doubt that its system will collect and contain 100% of rain events such as these experienced over the last 3 years. I know Steve Trinkhouse is testifying soon. We completely agree with his concerns with the current proposal. And if this application is approved and any additional flooding events occur as the last person testified, it's more likely that the homeowners will have to initiate some sort of legal action against the developer in the town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Artie, do we have any other public, or should we go to Catherine Brown and Steve?
Yeah, I have Steve Trinkus and Catherine Brown. That's
okay. I guess the 2 of them can decide who speaks first.
This is Steve Trinkus. I think Catherine gave me the go-ahead to speak first, Madam Chairman. So I will take advantage of it. Steve Trinkus, for the record, I'm a licensed professional engineer from Southbury. And I was engaged by the neighbors to review the original application and the current application. We've submitted my CV, I know, on the record, but it's important with the discussions that have gone on tonight about low impact development. LID, as it's commonly known, is my area of expertise. So I'm going to wade into what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. But first, I want to comment on the plan. While the applicant dropped, 4 units, the stormwater management system is the same thing that you saw the first time. It is some catch basins. It's an online hydrodynamic separator to an underground Cultec system. And if you look at the Land Tech plan that has the cross section of the gallery on it, they're showing a 36-inch separation from the bottom of the gallery to groundwater, except they have 1.5 to 2 feet of crushed stone under the infiltrators. Crushed stone is permeable. When you put crushed stone under an infiltration practice, it's part of the practice. So they do not have the 36-inch vertical separation of groundwater, which the 2004 Connecticut DEP Stormwater Manual says you must have. So right off the bat, the design is not in compliance at all with the Connecticut DEP Stormwater Quality Manual. The reason you need a vertical separation is, one, to provide adequate treatment of runoff within the soil, but also you cannot infiltrate into a saturated zone. You need a dry zone. That's why, similar for a septic system, the state health code says 18 inches to groundwater from the bottom of the system. Water does not go into a zone that is already saturated. So the concept plan that we're seeing is in violation of that DEP standard. Regarding the fabric, I believe Michelle from Artel talked about it, the impermeable liner on the two ends of the system, which barely wraps under, the end of the gallery. You've got crushed stone under the gallery. Water is going to go vertically down, hit that crushed stone. It is then going to move, and I think this is Artel's concern also, towards the retaining wall. And according to the plans, there's an aggregate fill between the infiltrator system and the drain. I guess it's a trench drain right above the retaining wall. And then there is more drainage aggregate.
Sorry, looks like
Looks
lost
like
Steve.
we dropped, somehow Steve dropped out.
Steve, you can talk.
Yeah, I can talk. Somehow I got muted, but I didn't touch anything.
Oh, okay.
So,
you might have to back up just a little bit.
Okay, so
we left off with the crushed stone.
Okay.
Avoiding the membrane or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So, the membrane is only on the ends of the system and goes a little bit underneath. The rest of the Cultec system is open on the bottom. So water is going to go into it, go into the aggregate layer. It is going to move towards the retaining wall because that's downhill. That's where the water is going to go. And based on the plan, they're calling out aggregate material between the Cultec system and the retaining wall, and a different aggregate right adjacent to the modular block retaining wall. So Artel's concern of the flows bypassing the outlet structure and having to go through the 4-inch pipes of the retaining wall is very valid. It kind of defeats the purpose of the stormwater management system. I think at the last hearing, I do not find my notes that I took, but I think there was talk that, by the applicant that this is a LID subdivision. The stormwater management system is an LID system. I'm going to tell you on the record, this is about the least LID system you will ever find. This is conventional stormwater management 101. You have directly connected impervious cover, the roof, the parking lot, going to structural management, catch basins, the separator, the manhole, the underground Cultec. LID is a source control approach of dealing with stormwater, i.e. the roof drains would be directed potentially to a rain garden if you had suitable soils. You would have a vegetated system, as SLR alluded to, downgrading in the 75-foot area. But this design is not LID in any shape or form, period. It's strictly conventional stormwater management. And the problem with it is it doesn't address water quality issues. When you look at the treatment, you have this online separator, whether it's a downstream Defender or more Technic, they all operate under the same general principles. They swirl water around, sediment's supposed to drop out, but there is a difference whether the separator is online, which is the case here, where all the runoff is going through it, versus offline, where only the water quality flow rate, which is a very little flow rate based on the water quality volume, is directed to it, and all other runoff is going around it. When it's in an offline configuration, the efficiency for removing total suspended solids is about 3 times higher. So there's a huge difference. The infiltration system does not necessarily provide any treatment. You really need organic soils underneath it to provide any type of treatment. But, when you look at a separator, it's 29% total suspended solid removal in this configuration, about 40% of hydrocarbons, and about 20% of metals. There is no reduction of nitrogen and phosphorus. And the catch basin with a deep sump in it, a 4-foot deep sump with a hooded outlet, is only a 9% total suspended solids. The DEP has a goal of reducing it, TSS, by 80%. And, 29 and 8, even if you add them up, isn't very much, 37%. And we're actually less than that, actually. I can't even do my math. Yeah, it's 37. But the problem is, in the stormwater management report, Land Tech is adding these removal efficiencies together. That is also inappropriate. When all the published data for water quality treatment devices are a standalone device, the catch basin, the separator, a pond, etc. When you put systems in series, what happens is the first one does its removal efficiency, 9% of total suspended solids in the catch basin. But as the water gets cleaner, the second or third system in line doesn't operate to the same level of efficiency as it would if it was the first system. So you have to discount the removal efficiency. So instead of 37%, it would actually be, maybe 32, 33%, so you're not anywhere close to it. And why is water quality one of the primary concerns here? Is because you have an open water course. It is an intermittent water course, but the times I've been on adjacent properties, there's been flow in it. Maybe it hasn't been much, but it has been flowing. And, first off, metals and hydrocarbons can be very toxic to aquatic organisms in these streams at very low concentrations. Furthermore, nutrients, particularly phosphorus, is a limiting factor in freshwater systems. While it might not do much harm in the stream itself as it's flowing water, when the water course slows down and begins to pond, phosphorus comes in 2 forms: particulate, which binds to fine sediment particles, but also soluble, which is in the water column. It doesn't come out. And when you get into a pond area, that phosphorus is available for plant uptake. And unfortunately, in many of our smaller ponds, it's invasive plants that, get the first dibs at the phosphorus. So you are changing the water chemistry within the stream because of the increased pollutant loads here. And that clearly is a direct adverse impact because it's affecting the water quality in the stream system. To follow up on SLR's comments about, a rain garden or something here, I've looked at their test pit data. I think Marlee said, when she was out there with Megan, that they did some handholds and they found it very hard. I dug test pits during the first application north and south of that 75-foot area on the adjacent properties. And I found the soils to be very firm and also to have modeling much higher than what the applicant observed in their test pits. But their test pits also showed, and I think we went through this the first go round, there was fill material had ash and slag in it. Well, if water is put in these areas, you don't know what is going to leach out of slag or ash at all. So that's a potential another adverse impact. That's why rain gardens would not be appropriate here. I don't believe the soils are suitable for infiltration. And, you could put one in here, it's probably going to fill up and just stay ponded. What would be an appropriate lid practice is some type of wet swale, because you have conditions that would be conducive to a wet swale. But I think, as SLR pointed out, that's going to disturb this 75-foot area unless the density is further reduced and moved uphill. We did offer through Catherine an alternative to the applicant because they're parties to the lawsuit. And one of my thoughts was, the house is up front right now. You have a slope from the road down into the site. Do effectively put in a bigger house there, put in a driveway. There's enough pitch that you could put some of the parking under the building from the backside and have a reduction in surface parking, which would reduce the impervious cover, which would give you more open area to do a proper stormwater management basin, such as a constructed wetlands basin that would really address all of the water quality issues, because the plants would take up all the nutrients in the stormwater and you would discharge much cleaner water. The other major issue, and we heard Aaron talk about the flooding. That storm on August 18th up here, we had 10.4 inches of rain in 11 hours in Southbury, where I live. That's a 200-year event. And poor Oxford, being at over 14 inches, was a 1,000-year event. Those are off the chart stormwater events. And what was interesting is it wasn't the big rivers that caused the flooding. It was all the small streams, quite honestly, similar to what is east of this site. These streams were tremendously overwhelmed by the runoff. And as woody debris got picked up in smaller streams and started getting carried down at 30 miles an hour in the flows, they knocked bigger stuff loose, and then it actually knocked 12, 15-inch trees over. So, these are act of God events. The problem was we had 6 inches of rain in 3 hours, and Alan, and I'm sure Tim, know this, that's off the charts. I mean, to get 2 inches per hour intensity for 3 straight hours, you can't design for it, quite honestly. But these small streams were what were the flash points in Southbury and Oxford. It wasn't Pomperaug River. It rose, but it didn't cause a damage. All these smaller streams wrecked havoc. I mean, there's a whole bunch of pictures that I took, but it's, these short duration, high intensity storms are what is a real problem. Now, when we model these practices, it's a 24-hour event. So if you take 6 inches of rain in 24 hours and think about a uniform intensity, that's a pretty light rain. But, when you get 6 inches in 7 or 8 hours or 10, even this system is going to get overwhelmed because it's the intensity of the rainfall over a shorter period of time. So this system is likely to have increased runoff volumes getting discharged again to the wetlands, which, volume is what causes erosion of stream channels. And that's what really caused the problems up here in Southbury 3 weeks ago. But the bottom line is this plant is not LID. This stormwater management system does not adequately address non-point source pollutants that will be directed into the wetlands that will wreak havoc over time in the water quality of the wetland system and, affect the aquatic organisms that live in that system. Thank you. I'll be happy to. We submitted a long letter, but I'm not going to go through all the technical comments that I had. So.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
Should I let now Catherine
Yes,
Brown?
we'll go back to Catherine now for her presentation.
Catherine Braun, I'm an attorney in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I represent the intervening parties. I have a question for Mr. Trinkhaus. The proposed is the proposed
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. Is the proposed activity reasonably likely to have the effect of unreasonably impairing the public trust in the natural resources of the state, i.e. wetlands, watercourses, wildlife downstream but off-site from downhill but off-site from this property based on the development activities being proposed and the inadequacy you described with the stormwater system?
Yes, it is my professional opinion that those adverse impacts will occur to the environmental resources which are off-site and downstream of this location.
And has the applicant adequately assessed different types of potential feasible, prudent alternatives? Feasible meaning able to be done with engineering standards, and prudent meaning able to be done economically viably. Have they adequately addressed that in their materials to the best of your knowledge? I realize we just got some new materials a few days ago, but do you believe that they've adequately assessed the possibility of feasible, prudent alternatives?
In my professional opinion, they have not, because they seem to be simply wedded to this particular concept of row houses and parking on the other side and, paving a little over 50% of the lot. I think there are other options. As I suggested before, I think there is a viable one of making an enlarged residential structure up towards the road with parking underneath it that would, maybe achieve, a number of units and would be appropriate, but also, reduce a lot of the site impacts that this plan has.
Is a lot of the issue because it's less than half an acre, and with so much impervious surface, you can't fit in a lot of these low impact development concepts where you use nature, use the land topography to work on the storm water drainage system?
Well, LID is one of the values of LID is, vegetated systems to filter water through soil media and infiltrate it. But you need soils that can infiltrate the water. And based on test pits that Lantec did in the, eastern end of this site, and, also what we've heard from SLR and my experience, digging on the adjacent properties, is it's not suitable for those infiltration practices. However, when you have tight soils and or high seasonal groundwater, then what that leads you to is using wet vegetated systems such as a constructed wetland, which has both high and low marsh. So you have areas of 18 inches of deep water, you have 6 inches deep water that are densely planted with wetland appropriate species with a small micro pool generally at the outlet structure and a long flow path within that system. You fit your stormwater management system to what the environmental conditions are telling you wants to go there. I'll give you an example. I saw a plan a number of years ago. The engineer put a rain garden right next to a wetland. You're not going to infiltrate water in a rain garden when it's next to a wetland soil whose very definition says no infiltration. So you need to work with the natural soils and the site conditions to find the appropriate LID practice that will work to solve your problem.
And when we presented that proposal, obviously you didn't do a drawing for it, and neither did they. So they would have to assess that and figure out how much land would be needed. But you had thought of a quantity of units that might work and allow enough space to have a natural system as you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, I've done many 8-30G in other communities, so I have a very good handle on making this, making 8-30G work on lots, but yet address the environmental concerns. I did not do a plan for this, but I believe based on, the slope that, it provides an opportunity to consider something different than what's being proposed.
And that would require scaling back the impervious surface. So you have more space for the...
It would be likely a substantial reduction in impervious surface, because if you say needed, 14 parking spaces and you could put 6 or 8 of them under the building, well, obviously you need a much smaller parking lot outside. There's a reduction in impervious cover right off the bat.
In your description of the chemical issues, I don't remember you mentioning road salts. Is that something that would be dissolved? That's another toxin that would flow downhill?
Yeah, I mean, chloride from de-icing agents are a problem, everywhere, because our DOT started using the brines, and then our municipalities unfortunately followed the lemmings right off the cliff with DOT. Chlorides do not come out of any stormwater management system. I know researchers in the LID field are trying to see if they can mix stuff in soil media that would actually attract the chloride ions and trap them. They have not been able to, and these people are way smarter than I am in that regard. But chlorides stay in solution or the soil. They don't go away, and they'll build up to, toxic and or acute levels. The only way to eliminate chloride impacts is simply not to put them down in the first place.
So to make this more viable, you would have less surface that would be that sodium chloride would be used on, I assume.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't need to use chloride. I mean, the idea of the brine solutions is they put it down, it snows, it melts, they plow it, you get a clean road. I learned to drive on the back roads of Easton on snow-covered roads in a front-wheel drive car with a stick shift. But I don't think I have a God-given right to a clean road during or after a snowstorm for a day or so. But
in as a practical matter,
well, you can use sand for traction. Chloride, if you put chloride down and you don't plow it right away and people drive over it, over the slush, what happens is it packs out and you actually get black ice on the road. And then you've got all the environmental impacts for chloride. But if you didn't put chlorides down and it snows and you put sand down, people have traction. And sand is the easiest pollutant to trap from a stormwater management perspective. So I think we need to rethink our approach to dealing with winter operations, because the chlorides are creating a long-term problem that is going to cost every town in the state millions of dollars down the road to remediate.
And that on this property, that chloride would be part of the non-point source pollution that would flow down.
Absolutely, and it all depends how much you use.
Okay. I think I'm finished with my questions for you. I'll leave it if anybody else has questions, and then I could conclude my remarks.
Anyone on the board have questions at this point? I think you could go ahead and conclude your remarks.
I'm going to do a half hour and 20 minutes. So
a half hour and 20 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
We're ready.
Okay. I'm not going to read the intervention. I was going to give a lot of detail from it, but you already found that there was enough detail. But you have the intervention. It lays out very specifically the topography, the slope, the fragility and importance of the wetlands, the work that's being done, and how it is reasonably likely to have the unreasonable effect of impairing the public trust in our offsite watercourse and wetland system, which is also, by the way, part of the headwaters of the Titicus River system. That is in our biologist report. I have a housekeeping matter rather. There were some items I emailed today, but I don't think they got into the record, although my email got into the record. Can I just list them now to make sure they end up in the record? Dr. Danzer, CV, he is the wetlands biologist that we used. A letter that I submitted that was submitted in the 23 application by Gene Konechny, the one who photographed the salamander. I submitted that as part of that email attachment. Also, 2 DEP listed species information sheets, one for the blue spotted salamander and one for the eastern box turtle. And finally, a DEP listed species list, like a couple pages long. I put them in 2 different emails because the listed species list was very large for some reason. And so I want to make sure those all get in the record. I don't know if you're closing the hearing tonight, but if I could just get some assurance that they will be in the record. Also, one other housekeeping matter, as I have the burden of proof on the intervention, I would like to reserve a right to rebut a response to the intervention. And I know a lot of agencies don't necessarily do that, but I do believe it would be fair for me to be able to respond if someone, if the applicant or even the town experts respond to my intervention presentation. A couple points to highlight. We're dealing with 2 statutes here, the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act and the Connecticut Environmental Protection Act. Both of those are remedial in nature, meaning they're intended to carry out a public policy of protecting our natural resources. And that is the goal, that is the mission, that is the purpose. Maximizing development is not a purpose, even if it includes affordable housing. This is even more important now in times of climate change with severe and erratic storm events and drought. Both can happen. And with another issue, which is a reduction in biodiversity, is sort of collapsing. So all of those issues combined make this top priority to adhere to the most strict guidance you can to protect this offsite wetland and watercourse. And the Konechny letter is important because she lists a number of other wildlife species that have been observed. She lives across the wetland on the other side in Ballard Green, and she's a wildlife photographer. I've known her for a very long time. And she spotted the blue salamander. She submitted the photograph last year in that application. And Dr. Danzer also commented in his report that he didn't see it, but it's a place where it would live. And now this was not in the DEP reports that the applicant sought, the Natural Diversity Database. I don't know why. I know that one of the, I'm sorry, there was another item I submitted that I don't think is showing up, and that is one of the neighbors last year in 2023, they submitted an application to the DEP about that salamander. For some reason, I don't know what their process is. It's not showing up for whatever reason, but it has been spotted. It has been photographed. We do have a letter, which should be in the record. And I would like just some assurance that it will be posted, because I did email it in today. And when I emailed things in today, I emailed them to both council as well. So everybody has it. So that should be in the NDDB. I don't know why it's not. Also, Dr. Danzer today, he did a search of the NDDB, and he found that there was a eastern box turtle. So the eastern box turtle and the blue spotted salamander are all listed species on by the state of Connecticut as species of special concern. Both of them utilize the wetland area, and the salamander more. They breed in it. Salamanders, and some of the information sheets that I submitted show that salamanders are especially susceptible to road salts and other types of pesticides. They would both be highly susceptible to any degradation of the quality of the wetland or the water, and perhaps water volume as well. So this is mentioned in Dr. Danzer's report. It would be impaired, assuming that this stormwater detention system does not adequately prevent non-point source pollution from flowing down into that offsite wetland and water course. I just want to point out a few things in your regulations. There are multiple places where you require information to be provided by the applicant. 7.3, 7.5, 8.12, 8.13, 10.1. I'm not going to read them, but you need the information. There's many areas of this application where inadequate information was supplied, whether it about the stormwater thing or the testing or different things that Mr. Trinkhaus put in his report and testified about, but also, and you've received letters from people, neighbors, as well as what I'm going to say, which is somebody needs to do a wildlife assessment of that offsite wetland area, and also a species inventory, a wildlife inventory. Neither of those were done because they're off-site, but this is the resource that we're protecting. So I think we have to understand it better than it has been presented. So granted, nobody found anything on 27. Well, it's kind of a barren piece of lawn. It's the very good quality wooded wetland and watercourse that's immediately off site that we are protecting. And that is where we need these studies done. This commission is entitled to be fully informed before it has to render a decision. And you have to know existing site conditions, whether it's for the engineering or for the wildlife, in order for you to be able to address adverse impacts. And I don't believe the applicant has adequately provided that. Wildlife is important. You have the word wildlife is mentioned 10 times in your regulations. In the intent, right up top, where the intent of the regulations, it talks about habitats, danger from flood and pollution, the quality of the wetlands and water courses, disturbance, pollution, water quality, all that. Also, interestingly, on the Appendix B of your regulations, they talk about low impact development, LID. And they mentioned this stormwater wetland that Mr. Trinkhaus had described to you. And that's also an area where you could actually have wildlife habitat, but also provide remediation of the pollution before it reaches the other wetland that we're trying to protect. I'm just going through my outline. Oh, I wanted to point out just a few things. Dr. Danzer has been a wetland scientist and soil scientist for 25 years. He does all types of projects, peer review, site monitoring, wetlands delineations, mitigation review, environmental impact analyses. And so his report is in there. And he describes the wetland, how important it is, and how it would be impaired if the non-point source pollution goes into the wetland. And Mr. Trinkhaus is also a licensed engineer in the state of Connecticut for over 25 years. He also has taught, I was looking at his CV, he has taught low impact development to peers. He's published and he's taught to university students. So he knows low impact development very well. And I think you can trust him when he says that's not what this is. And I believe your peer reviewer said the same thing, or maybe SLR did. One of the two people said that. I think I'm going to rely on the reports of Mr. Trinkhaus and Dr. Danzer and the letters that have been submitted. And I just ask that the items that I listed that are not in the record yet, and I realize they were sent this morning, so I don't blame anyone for that.
Hey, is that it?
Yeah, I think I've covered it.
Okay, yes, we are not closing this public hearing this evening, so you have time, but please do check back online in a couple of days to make sure the documents that you mentioned have made it into the record.
Will do.
And get in touch with the office if there's anything missing. If you would please do that. Does it seem like there are a number of things that you'd submitted late?
Yes.
As in today. I don't mean too late. I just mean late as in today. And anything that was in the record for the previous application must be resubmitted for this one.
I think I will do that for some of these things that Mr. Trinkhaus was talking about, because there was a lot of material there, and I'll try to submit certain items that are relevant, not to inundate you with redundancy, though.
Oh, no, I appreciate that, but you mentioned one report, the picture of the salamander, that sort of thing. If that was in the previous one and has not been resubmitted, we can't consider it for this application.
I understand. Yeah. And would I have a right to rebut based just on the intervention? I know it makes things complicated, but I have the burden on the intervention, so maybe that's for Attorney Beecher to answer.
Yes, Tom, could you respond?
Yeah, I think the best way for the board to handle this is just to continue in the same batting order that it has, which is let the applicant present the changes next time, go to peer review, go to Attorney Braun, but the applicant should really get the very last word because they have a major burden on all the parts of the application.
Okay.
Thank you. That's very helpful. We have so much documentation coming in and out that it's kind of hard to get back into it when you need to pick up for the next meeting. So I appreciate that. Mr. Sumalides?
Yeah, we just have one quick rebuttal tonight on some of that, but the majority will handle it the next hearing. But there's something we'd like to show tonight, if that's okay.
Yeah, you have about 7 minutes. Can you do it that fast?
I'll do it quick.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We just have a time limit, and this obviously will be continued till the 26th. So,
of course. No, this is just, I think, critical to the testimony we just heard.
Okay.
So what you heard was remarks from Mr. Trinkus, the self-proclaimed LID master of the universe. So I would just want to show some of his work, right? So I think you heard a lot from Mr. Trinkus from the first application. You're hearing a lot tonight. It sounds all great coming out of his mouth, but you got to know the facts. And this is what I want to show you, some of his work around wetlands, recent work. So here's a plan of a house, pool house connected to Coltech systems that go to a single point discharge. And here's your wetland line. Okay, so we're talking about significant impervious surfaces being discharged to an underground detention system, no pre-treatment. As you're hearing, that pre-treatment and infiltrators do zero for treatment. That's what you heard tonight. Infiltration systems do zero. He's okay, though, designing on his own projects, infiltration systems with no pretreatment and a system discharging directly to a wetland. Okay? So that's what you're hearing tonight from testimony from the other side. There's more of this. So here's some rebuttals. These are recent applications before we'll put them into the record. And you can see these. Here's another application. You've heard about disconnected impervious. We're taking connected impervious surfaces and directly discharging them into the wetlands. Here's an application that's adding 10,000 plus square feet of impervious surfaces. That's what we're doing on our site. No drainage, zero drainage. Again, pools, patios, and the such running off into the wetland. Here are the wetlands. Here's the proximity to the wetlands. So this is the testimony you heard from the interveners experts. And this is his work. And this is what he's doing on land that's much larger than ours, not implementing these stormwater LID measures of rain gardens, bioswales, and all of these stormwater wetlands and these all LID words that you're hearing tonight. So if somebody who is not practicing this on his own day-to-day practice, but is hired obviously as an intervener for the neighbors to sway and persuade you folks into believing that this project is not viable due to our proposal, I just want to put that image and these on the record, and I'm sure there's more once we go looking for them, of these applications. So that's just what I wanted to share before. I know I wanted to keep it short. We had 7 minutes. We'll present more of this at the next hearing, but I just wanted to leave that with your thoughts tonight of what you just heard and what I just showed you folks. Appreciate the time.
Okay. I assume we will hear further on this at the next meeting. So unless there's something specific that can be stated in 3 minutes, I'd like to continue till next meeting.
So should I allow as how I
I
see
think
these?
Catherine Brown is the attorney. if you
Okay.
would.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would just like to say that I don't think it's this board's job to go through and analyze other applications in other towns unless we were going to have a whole presentation on that. I think it's irrelevant and leads us far astray. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. I think we could leave it at that until next meeting.
And Ms. Baker, if I may, that this will be continued to, what is it, Thursday, September 26th?
That is correct, yes.
7 p.m. via Zoom?
Yes.
Perfect.
And again, we still, as you know, if you were here earlier, you noticed that we continued the previous one as well to that date. And as we also mentioned, that is the date by which we either have to close or have an extension. So just so everybody's aware that that's where we stand. So at the next meeting, we'll go through, as Attorney Beecher suggested, we will have the applicant present any changes that result from the feedback they've received so far, including from the public. And then we will have the peer reviewers comment back. Then we will have Catherine Brown summarize or respond. And then we will go back to the applicant at the end. And by Catherine Brown, I mean the interveners, since she seems to be the primary spokesperson.
Thank you.
Understood. Well, thanks so much, everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. So
We have
I'm
Mr.
sorry?
Powers.
Yes, I saw that we have other people who would like to respond at this point, but
We'll continue to the next.
I
Sure.
think we should continue to the next.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Sorry if I make you wait another week, 2 weeks. Okay.
This is Kirk Carr, on the record. Thank you for watching.